the Russians have been saying, "Oh, we're going to have a Christmas truce." There's a problem with this idea.
This is Ukrainian holiday music because it is Christmas time in Ukraine. Isn't it, Joe?
Hey, Bob. Yes, it's sort of like we're traveling in time here, but it's Christmas Eve here in Ukraine, 2 weeks after most of the rest of the world celebrated Christmas. And tonight is, I probably considered it is considered one of the holiest nights of the year. Here in Lviv, from where I'm speaking to you, it's a Greek Catholic city, so it's pretty unique because they're Eastern in style, but they're part of the Church in Rome, and so you sort of feel in between time and East and West in Lviv, but especially here at Christmas. And today is a day of fasting and preparing for the Christmas holiday. Tonight there's a tradition called the Sviata Večeria, which is the Holy Supper. And when the first star appears in the night sky, people gather around their tables for a dinner with singing and prayers. There's no meat, there's no alcohol, but there is some amazing food. There's this dish called kutia, which you only can eat during the next 7 days. It's one of my favorite things to eat, and it's made with wheat berries, poppy seeds, and honey. And then there's lots of fish and mushrooms that were collected during the summer. And of course, the great Ukrainian dumplings of vareniki. And usually there's a midnight mass, but there's curfew, of course. And so people will go to church earlier. And then starting from tomorrow, it's several intense days and really the beginning of several weeks of celebration that Ukrainians jokingly call Ukrainian Ramadan. Simply because it lasts about a month, although there's more drinking than there would be in Ramadan, which is a time of fasting, of course, and so it's kind of the opposite. But it's a day of begins a season of feasting and going to people's houses, and everywhere you go, there's a sense of welcome. Every few minutes, people sing a Ukrainian Christmas carol, which is the Christmas Day in Ukraine. There's no one watching TV. There's not even really time to argue or talk. It's all about the music and the ritual. And I think every indication is that, even though it will be somewhat subdued this year, that Ukrainians will, there's a need to have these moments of joy. And so we'll see. We also, as you were mentioning, there's the Russians have been saying, "Oh, we're going to have a Christmas truce." First, there's a problem with this idea. It sort of assumes that both sides are equally at fault here. We need to pause for Christmas. The reality is, for Ukrainians, there's not a truce while Ukrainian land is occupied, while Ukrainians are living under Russian occupation. A truce would mean, leaving Ukraine. And there's all, you can't, and I think, it's pretty clear to the world, you can never trust the Kremlin. And for example, for 2 hours today, just until about, maybe 40 minutes ago, there was an air alarm throughout the country because there was Russian jet activity, especially in Belarus. A 2-hour air alarm, and during that time, after the supposed truce began, the city of Kramatorsk was hit by Russian rockets, and 14 private houses were damaged. So that's the idea of a Russian peace for you here on Christmas Eve in Ukraine.
Yeah, I was listening to somebody on the news from a think tank talking about Putin's unilateral ceasefire, and this person said it's intended to damage Ukraine's reputation, and that's basically what you're telling us, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the Russian propaganda. And it's say, Russia will say we're the ones who are seeking peace, and again, this is, as we talked about yesterday, the patriarch of the Russian Church. Cloaks this. They call this a holy war. Even the Chechen fighters who are Islamic, Russian Chechen fighters, who are some of the most fearsome Russian fighters, fearsome in the sense that of rape and pillaging. They call this a holy war, and this is how Russians try to justify this to themselves. And there was a YouTube channel called 1420, a very brave Russian who goes around speaking to Russians on the streets of Moscow. And it's amazing that this guy can still do it. But when you get to hear what Russians actually think about it, and every once in a while you'll encounter Russians who you can tell they don't like what's happening. They have to be very careful speaking about it. But there are so many that believe that this is somehow warranted to destroy cities and to have civilian fatalities. And so, yeah, the talk of and it's important to point out that the talk of the ceasefire, the way propaganda works, even if people are going to think you're ridiculous, you've planted the idea in someone's mind. And people will start to say, "Oh, it wasn't Russia that asked for the ceasefire," and that's just enough to begin, as people get tired of talking about and supporting, Ukraine for now 10 months, just enough to plant the seeds of doubt in people's mind. And that's, unfortunately, I think the world is wise to it. But it's these things that are efforts to sort of break the spirits of so also the Ukrainians. And so I think that's why we will, these next few days, see a very vigorous Ukrainian Christmas to keep the spirits boosted.
So important to hear your commentary on that, Joseph, and for us to keep in mind what's going on there as the news cycle keeps pushing that story back. We appreciate it, and we hope you can enjoy the holiday weekend there. We admire the spirit of the Ukrainian people very much, Joseph.
Bob, thanks. I'll say Merry Christmas to everyone here in our time travel, and look forward to talking to you next week.
Yes, sir. Take care.
A little village outside of Lviv, and with some many friends who are great musicians, and from house to house with all the instruments, we walked through the snow, and it was a forge of joy, and really, singing into the darkness of the winter, and in such a way that in a normal year, I think the Christmas here gives people energy for the year, but especially, this most difficult year, 2022. And so now we're looking back at, the Christmas music is starting to return. Here, people sort of celebrate until February. I think we're going to need it. This morning was once again a major attack. At 8:30 this morning, there were nationwide air alarms.
When you were talking about those idyllic Dickensian scenes there, and it's a tale of two cities, isn't it? And then you have the back to reality reporting on the war and these missile strikes. Sounds of Ukraine, sent to us by Joseph Lindsley. Joseph Lindsley, world's most interesting man.
This I find in my garden. It's piece from rocket.
Help us to win in the war.